Hello friends, I'm Mutlu Kalyoncuoglu from Germany. In this video, I will try to present you with a literary reflection on loneliness. Loneliness is not merely the absence of people. It is the quiet echo that lingers when presence loses its meaning. It is a subtle ache, often invisible, that settles in the spaces between words, in the pauses of conversation, in the moments when the world seems to move on without you. It is possible to feel lonely in a crowded room, surrounded by voices, yet untouched by connection. For loneliness is not measured by how many stand beside you, but by how deeply you are understood. It emerges when the soul longs to be seen, heard, and felt, and finds no mirror in another. There is, too, a certain poetry in loneliness. It sharpens perception, deepens thought, and turns the gaze inward. In solitude, one may encounter the raw, unfiltered self, both fragile and profound. It is here that questions grow louder, and truths, long buried beneath distraction, begin to surface. Yet loneliness is not always an enemy. At times, it becomes a silent teacher, guiding one towards self-discovery, creativity, and reflection. It invites us to build a relationship with ourselves, to find meaning not only in others, but within our own being. Still, when it lingers too long, it can become heavy, like a shadow that refuses to fade. It reminds us, gently but persistently, that human connection is not a luxury, but a necessity of the heart. In the end, loneliness is both a wound and a window. It hurts, yet it also reveals. It isolates, yet it calls us quietly, insistently, back toward connection, understanding, and belonging. To love one's loneliness is a delicate and often misunderstood idea. Loneliness, in its raw form, is not something most hearts would willingly embrace. It carries a weight, a quiet sorrow that reminds us of our need for connection. And yet, there is a gentler companion hidden within it, solitude. One should not romanticize loneliness to the point of denying its pain. It is not a virtue to suffer in silence when the soul longs for warmth, for understanding, for another presence that feels like home. To love loneliness as suffering would be to turn away from a fundamental human truth. We are made to connect. But there is another way to approach it. One may learn to befriend the moments of aloneness that life inevitably offers. In these spaces, free from noise and expectation, a person may begin to hear their own inner voice more clearly. It is here that creativity often awakens, that thoughts deepen, and that one learns to stand without leaning. So perhaps the question is not whether one should love loneliness, but whether one can transform it. If loneliness becomes a doorway to self-understanding rather than a prison of isolation, then it gains a quiet beauty. It becomes less of a wound and more of a passage. In the end, a person should not seek loneliness, nor fear it entirely. Instead, they may learn to walk alongside it, accepting its lessons, resisting its darkness, and always remaining open to the light of connection that gives life its warmth and meaning. There is a quiet, almost inevitable bond between loneliness and art. Loneliness, in its deepest sense, is not merely the absence of others, but the presence of an unshared inner world. It is in that silent territory where thoughts echo without interruption that art often takes root. When a person feels alone, the mind turns inward. Emotions that might otherwise dissolve in conversation begin to crystallize. Longing, memory, melancholy, even fleeting joys. These become more vivid, more insistent. Art emerges as a language for these unspoken feelings. It becomes a bridge between the isolated self and the unseen other. Many artists have not simply endured loneliness, they have transformed it. In solitude, they listen more carefully to their own hearts, to the subtle rhythms of existence. What cannot be said directly finds expression in color, sound, words, or form. A painting becomes a silent confession, a melody, a whispered longing, a poem, a mirror held up to the soul. Yet the relationship is not one-sided. While loneliness can give birth to art, Art, in turn, can soften loneliness. When we encounter a work that resonates with us, we recognize something of ourselves within it. In that moment, we are no longer entirely alone. Across time and space, another human being has felt as we feel, and has left behind a trace of that feeling. So yes, there is a profound connection between loneliness and art. Loneliness deepens perception. Art gives it voice. And in that exchange, isolation is transformed into a subtle form of connection. From all that has been said, we can conclude that we should embrace solitude. At the same time, it should not be forgotten that the development of art is only possible to the extent that we can transform solitude. Until the next program. Goodbye.